The air crackled with unspoken tension. The joyful remnants of cousin Sarah's wedding now soured. Olivia, how could you let this happen? Do you have any idea the embarrassment you've caused? Dad's voice, usually warm and comforting, was now a sharp, unfamiliar weapon. He stood at the entrance to the living room, his face a mask of distress. Madeline, my twin, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a carefully crafted expression of sympathetic disapproval on her face. My chest constricted, a heavy ache settling in as I struggled to absorb the crushing weight of their judgment. It was a crushing, visceral sensation. My name is Olivia Sinclair. I'm 28, and tonight, my carefully constructed world is collapsing. My father, Walter, my anchor since Mom passed, looked at me with a chilling blend of disappointment and distrust. Madeline, my identical twin, the one who effortlessly charmed everyone, didn't even feign support. Accused, no, convicted in their eyes of something I didn't do. I felt the cold grip of isolation close around me. I felt adrift, lost in a sea of confusion and betrayal. It all started with a flurry of notifications, each one more alarming than the last. First, a curt email from the wedding photographer demanding payment for services I supposedly arranged. Then, a series of increasingly frantic alerts from my credit card companies. Suspicious charges, maxed out limits, accounts I didn't even recognize. I'd brushed off the initial odd text messages about overdue payments, dismissing them as spam. But these were official, undeniable. The weight of these digital accusations pressed down on me, a suffocating digital storm cloud. Dad, I swear, I didn't do any of this. I said, my voice trembling, a desperate plea for him to hear me. I don't understand how this is happening, but it wasn't me. Madeline shifted, her eyes gleaming with a chilling lack of empathy as she finally spoke. Oh, come on, Olivia. Are you really going to deny it? It's your name on everything, your face plastered all over social media, she said, her voice dripping with a sickening, sweet concern. Just admit it, and we can try to move past this. My heart sank. Dad's features hardened, his gaze piercing. So, what? This is all some elaborate prank? The unpaid bills, the furious vendors, the accusations splashed across our social media feeds. Why would they all target you, Olivia? His voice held a painful blend of bewilderment and accusation. I swallowed, forcing myself to speak calmly. Because someone set me up, Dad. Someone is using my identity. I don't know how, but I swear, I didn't do any of this. My gaze darted to Madeline, who merely shrugged, a picture of practiced innocence. Set up? Seriously? Madeline's voice was a masterpiece of feigned incredulity. Who would go to all that trouble, Olivia? And why you? You're hardly living a life worth stealing. This sounds like a pathetic attempt to avoid responsibility. She was enjoying this. The subtle smirk gave her away. Dad shook his head, his hand running through his thinning hair. Olivia, I've always tried to be understanding, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. You're not a child. You need to face the consequences. Until you can prove otherwise, I can't. I can't have this hanging over our family. He looked utterly defeated. His words were a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Dad, you're saying you don't believe me? I whispered, the question tasting like ash in my mouth. The room started to spin. I felt numb, frozen as the reality of his words crashed over me. Madeline sighed, the sound overly dramatic. I really hate to see this, Olivia, truly, she said, her voice a sugary sweet lie. Maybe some time to clear your head will help you. Remember what you did. I stared at her, feeling not just anger, but a profound, bone-deep disappointment. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I said, my voice a low, strained whisper. You've always been the golden child, and now you're watching me drown in something I didn't do. A desolate, hollow feeling settled within me. Madeline is not the issue here, Olivia. Dad snapped, his voice sharp with finality. You are. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We'll talk about your living arrangements later. For now, you need to leave this party. The family deserves better than this. His decree left no room for argument, no space for hope. My chest ached, a physical manifestation of the heartbreak and betrayal, as I turned away. Tears blurred my vision. My family, my own flesh and blood, had turned their back on me. I stared at the notice taped to my apartment door, the bold red letters of eviction notice screaming at me. Each word was a fresh wave of disbelief and despair. The familiar walls of my small apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt alien and hostile. 3 days. I had 3 days to pack up my life. The silence of the apartment was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the old clock on the wall, each tick a stark reminder of the time slipping away. I moved through the rooms in a daze, touching familiar objects. A worn armchair, a stack of favorite books, a framed photo of Mom and me, each one a painful echo of a life that was being ripped away. Madeline's perfectly timed, perfectly posed social media post flashed in my mind. So excited for my new place. #fresh start, city life, #blessed. The blatant lie twisted in my gut. I sank onto the edge of my bed, clutching a small, faded photograph of Mom, Dad, Madeline, and me at the beach. We were all smiling, our faces carefree and full of laughter. It felt like a lifetime ago, a different reality. Now, that sense of belonging, of family, was shattered. The phone rang, startling me. It was the apartment manager, his voice brusque and impersonal. "Miss Sinclair, just confirming you received the notice. You need to be out by Friday. No extensions." I understand. I stammered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I'll be gone." I hung up, feeling the cold weight of reality settle in. No job, thanks to the temporary leave I'd requested from the community college. No family to turn to. No home. Just a rapidly dwindling bank account and a mountain of debt that wasn't mine. And now, no place to live. I pulled out my phone, staring at Madeline's latest post. A picture of her, laughing, surrounded by friends in what looked like a luxurious apartment. The caption read, "Living my best life." My blood boiled. The unfairness of it all was a suffocating weight on my chest. I started shoving clothes haphazardly into a suitcase, the mundane task grounding me in the midst of the chaos. Each item I packed, a favorite sweater, a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, a small ceramic bird Mom had given me, felt like a fragment of a life I was losing. I felt like a ghost, haunting my own life. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message from Harper, my coworker at the cafe. "Hey, just checking in. How are you holding up?" I stared at the message, tears finally spilling over. "Not great," I typed back, my fingers trembling. "Just got an eviction notice." A moment later, my phone rang. It was Harper. "Oh, Olivia, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice filled with genuine concern. "That's awful. Listen, you can stay with me for a while. I have a spare room, well, a futon in the living room. It's not much, but it's better than nothing." Relief, fragile and tentative, flickered through me. "Harper, are you sure?" I asked, my voice choked with emotion. "I don't want to impose." "Don't be silly," she said firmly. "You're not imposing. You're my friend, and you need help. Now, when can you get here?" The pouring rain mirrored the storm raging inside me as I stood on the sidewalk, 2 suitcases and a backpack at my feet. The apartment building, once a symbol of my independence, now loomed over me, cold and indifferent. The key no longer worked. The lock had been changed. My home was no longer mine. I glanced back at the darkened windows of my apartment, a wave of grief washing over me. All my things, my memories, trapped inside. The injustice of it all was a physical ache. I looked down at my phone screen and Madeline's grinning face stared back from a fresh social media post, captioned, "Loving my new view. #city living #upgrade." The contrast between her manufactured joy and my stark reality was sickening. How had things gotten so twisted? How could my own twin sister be so cruel? With a sigh, I pulled up the ride-sharing app, my fingers numb with cold and despair. As I waited, huddled under the inadequate shelter of a nearby awning, I made a silent promise to myself. I might be down, but I wasn't out. I would find a way to clear my name, to expose Madeline's lies, to reclaim my life, even if it was the last thing I did. Harper's apartment was small and cluttered, but it was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness of my own. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a small comfort in the midst of the chaos. I sat on the futon, wrapped in a blanket Harper had given me, staring at a half-packed box of my belongings. It held the few things I'd managed to grab before the locks were changed. Some clothes, a few books, my laptop. The remnants of a shattered life. Harper sat beside me, handing me a mug of steaming coffee. "It's not much," she said, gesturing around the room, "but it's yours for as long as you need it." "Thank you, Harper," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. "I don't know what I would do without you." The warmth of the coffee spread through me, a small comfort. "Don't mention it," she said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "We'll figure this out. Together." As I sipped my coffee, my mind raced, trying to make sense of the whirlwind of events. How could everything fall apart so quickly? Who would go to such lengths to frame me, and why? It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, a cruel, twisted version of my own life. But Harper's presence, her unwavering support, was a lifeline. It was a spark of hope in the overwhelming darkness. The first few days at Harper's were a blur of restless nights on the futon, instant ramen dinners, and anxious calls to the community college, begging for an extension on my leave of absence. I was barely functioning, the weight of everything pressing down on me. But I couldn't just stay in bed, spiraling in my own despair. I had to do something. I needed a job, and fast, before my meager savings disappeared completely. I needed to feel like I had some control, some purpose. Thankfully, Harper had pulled some strings, and I was starting a trial shift at the cafe where she worked. It wasn't my ideal job, I preferred the quiet order of the college's administrative office, but it was something. At least for now, I was assigned to the back, prepping ingredients and washing dishes, away from direct customer interaction. It suited me. I wasn't ready to face the world with a forced smile. One slow afternoon, while Harper was teaching me the arcane art of frothing milk without creating a volcanic eruption, I found myself confiding in her. It was a relief to finally voice the turmoil that had been churning inside me. "It's just surreal," I admitted, staring into the swirling vortex of milk. One minute, I have a life, a job, a home. And the next, it's all gone. And it's all tied to my name, my identity, but I didn't do any of it. Harper paused, her hand resting on the steam wand. "That's messed up, Olivia. Really messed up," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "So, it's not just the wedding photographer? It's bigger than that?" "Much bigger," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Credit cards I never applied for, maxed out. Loans I never took. All in my name." I explained it as best as I could. "Someone clearly targeted you. Someone who knew what they were doing," she observed. I stopped, my hand frozen midair. Targeted. But who would do that, and why? A chilling, unwelcome thought began to form. Harper leaned against the counter, her gaze thoughtful. "I don't know. But think about it. Who would have access to your information? Who would know you well enough to impersonate you?" Her question hung in the air, a heavy, uncomfortable silence filling the space between us. My mind immediately went to Madeline. My twin. My identical twin. But no, that was impossible. Wasn't it? Still, a seed of doubt, tiny but persistent, began to sprout. I hesitated, the words feeling foreign and treacherous on my tongue. There's Madeline, my twin sister," I said slowly, testing the idea out loud. "We're identical, but she couldn't." The thought of my sister betraying me was almost unbearable, but a cold wave of dread ran through me. Harper raised an eyebrow, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else. "Understanding? An identical twin? Olivia, seriously? If someone's going to steal your identity, who better than someone who looks exactly like you? She let the words sink in. I shook my head, a desperate attempt to dismiss the horrifying possibility. She's always been the favorite. Dad adores her. Everyone does. She wouldn't risk all that. And why would she do this to me? I felt sick, dizzy with a nauseating mixture of fear and disbelief. Harper gave a short, humorless laugh. Reasons? Jealousy is a powerful motivator. Or maybe she just thought she could get away with it. People do crazy things when they think they won't get caught. And who would suspect the perfect twin sister? Her words, though unsettling, resonated with a chilling truth. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it, but the pieces were starting to fit together in a way I couldn't ignore. The extravagant purchases Madeline had been flaunting on social media, the way she always seemed to have money despite her sporadic freelance work. A cold, hard knot of suspicion tightened in my stomach. What if the person I trusted most, the person who shared my face, was the one who had orchestrated my downfall? That night, sleep was a distant, unattainable luxury. I lay on the futon, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, Harper's words echoing in my mind. Who better to impersonate you than someone who looks exactly like you? Madeline had always been the outgoing one, the social butterfly, the one who effortlessly commanded attention. I was the quiet observer, content in the background. The easy one to overlook. The perfect target. But would she really stoop this low? A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my old photos. There we were, Madeline and I, side by side, mirror images. I remembered all the times she joked about switching places, about how easy it would be to fool people. We even did it a couple of times when we were kids. Back then, it had seemed like harmless fun, a silly twin game. Now, those memories felt tainted, laced with a sinister undertone. The more I thought about it, the more the possibility, however painful, solidified. If it was Madeline, she'd been meticulous, leaving me holding the bag. And if that was true, I needed concrete proof. I couldn't confront her, or Dad, or anyone, without irrefutable evidence. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about uncovering the truth, however ugly it might be. It was about reclaiming my own identity. The next morning, I decided to confide in Harper. I wasn't going to call Dad or Madeline, not yet. If there was even a sliver of truth to my suspicions, confronting them without proof would be a disaster. During a lull in the morning rush, I told Harper about my growing suspicion. I expected shock, disbelief, maybe even gentle dissuasion. Instead, she grinned, a spark of excitement in her eyes. Finally, I was wondering when you'd start connecting the dots. Let's do this. Let's find out what your sister's been up to. Her enthusiasm was unexpected, but also comforting. You don't have to get involved, Harper, I said, feeling a surge of guilt. This is my mess. Are you kidding? I'm already invested. Harper replied with a wink. Besides, I've got some skills that might come in handy. I used to work at a law firm, remember? I know a thing or two about digging up dirt. But, no buts. We're a team now. Tell me everything. Where do we start? I hesitated for a moment, then pulled out my phone, showing her the screenshots of the credit card statements and the email from the wedding photographer. These are the notifications I've received so far. They all have my name, but I didn't authorize any of them. Harper scanned the information, her brow furrowed in concentration. Okay, credit cards, a wedding photographer. That's a start. We need to trace these transactions. See where they originated, who benefited. We're going to have to go digital. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of purpose. Harper's determination was contagious. Together, we would unravel this web of deceit. If Madeline, or anyone else, was behind this, we would find them. We would expose the truth. My digital identity was under attack. It began, ironically, with a demand for payment for wedding services I knew nothing about, services rendered for my cousin's wedding, followed quickly by a cascade of credit card fraud alerts. Each notification was a digital punch in the gut. each seemingly legitimate transaction a testament to my stolen identity. Over the next few days, Harper and I became digital detectives. During our breaks at the cafe and late into the night at her apartment, we meticulously combed through every digital trace we could find. Harper, with her surprisingly extensive knowledge of online security, guided me through the labyrinthine world of IP addresses, transaction histories, and social media metadata. "Look at this," Harper said one evening, pointing to a series of online purchases on one of my compromised credit cards. "These were all made using a VPN, but the billing address. It's your dad's house." My heart pounded. "Madeline is living there," I said slowly, the implications sinking in. "She has access to the mail, to everything." It made a sickening kind of sense. Harper nodded grimly. "And look at the timestamps on these social media posts." Madeline posted pictures from a fancy spa. On the same day and time a large transaction was made on your card at that same spa. I stared at the screen, a cold wave of realization washing over me. "She's not even trying to hide it," I whispered. "She's flaunting it." It wasn't just about the money. It was about the brazenness, the arrogance of it all. "We need more than circumstantial evidence," Harper said, tapping her fingers on the table. "Let's dig deeper. Let's look at her social media profiles, her online activity. Everything. There has to be a digital trail." She was right. I wasn't ready to confront Madeline directly, not yet. But the digital breadcrumbs were starting to form a path that led directly to my twin sister. I could feel it. We were getting closer to uncovering the truth, one click, one post, one digital footprint at a time. Our investigation shifted from physical locations to the digital realm. We weren't visiting banks. We were diving deep into the online world, tracing Madeline's digital footprint. Harper, with her surprisingly adept tech skills, was leading the charge. "Okay, so we know she used your credit cards," Harper said, tapping furiously on her laptop. "Let's see where else she's been using your identity online." We started with social media. Madeline, ever the aspiring influencer, had a meticulously curated online presence. We scrutinized her posts, looking for clues for anything that could link her to the fraudulent accounts. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a photo on Madeline's Instagram. It was a picture of her, flashing a brand new designer handbag, taken at a luxury boutique. The date stamp was just days after a large, unauthorized transaction appeared on one of my credit cards. "And here," Harper added, pulling up another post. "She checked in at a high-end spa, the same spa where your card was used." The evidence was mounting, each digital breadcrumb painting a clearer picture of Madeline's deception. But we needed something more definitive, something that couldn't be explained away as mere coincidence. "Let's check her email accounts," Harper suggested. "If she's been opening accounts in your name, there's bound to be some digital correspondence." It was a long shot, but we were desperate. I knew that I had carelessly given Madeline my email password once when we were younger. With Harper's guidance, I attempted to reset my old, rarely used email account passwords, hoping Madeline hadn't changed them. It was a gamble, but it paid off. We gained access to one of my old email accounts, an account I hadn't used in years. And there it was, a trove of confirmation emails, welcome messages, and transaction notifications, all in my name, but clearly linked to Madeline's activities. There were even emails detailing changes to security settings and password resets, a clear attempt to lock me out of my own digital life. "Jackpot," Harper whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and grim satisfaction. As we scrolled through the emails, a chilling picture emerged. Madeline had not only used my name and credit cards, she had systematically taken over my digital identity, creating new accounts, changing passwords, and even attempting to access my online banking. It was a comprehensive, calculated campaign of identity theft. The most damning piece of evidence came from an unexpected source, a luxury boutique's online shopping portal. "Madeline loves this brand," I said, pointing to a particular designer label frequently featured on her Instagram. "She's always posting pictures of their clothes." Harper clicked on the boutique's website, navigating to the My Account section. "Let's see if they use face recognition for login," she muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Many high-end online retailers were now using facial recognition technology for added security. If Madeline had used my identity to make purchases, there was a chance her face would be stored in their system, linked to my name. We tried logging in using my name and old email address. The system prompted for a facial scan. My heart pounded as I positioned myself in front of the laptop camera. The screen flickered, then displayed an error message. Face does not match registered user. Okay, Harper said, her voice tight with anticipation. Now, let's try something else. She navigated to the forgot passwords section and entered my email address. A password reset link was sent to the compromised email account we had accessed. We reset the password, then attempted to log in again. This time, when prompted for a facial scan, Harper uploaded a recent photo of Madeline, taken from her Instagram profile. The screen flickered again. This time, the message was different. Welcome, Olivia Sinclair. My stomach dropped. The system had accepted Madeline's face as mine. The boutique's database held a digital record of Madeline, using my name, my identity, to make fraudulent purchases. It was undeniable. It was digital proof. I stared at the screen, a wave of nausea washing over me. It was one thing to suspect Madeline, to piece together circumstantial evidence. It was another to see her face, staring back at me from the screen, masquerading as me. The betrayal was profound, a visceral violation. Harper placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. We have her, Olivia, she said softly. We have undeniable proof. The rage, the hurt, the disbelief. It all coalesced into a single, burning question. Why? Why would my own twin sister, my flesh and blood, do this to me? I wanted to scream, to cry, to confront her and demand answers. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. I needed a plan. Back at Harper's apartment, my mind reeled, trying to process the sheer scale of Madeline's deception. It wasn't just a few unauthorized purchases. It was a systematic dismantling of my digital life. The designer clothes, the spa treatments, the constant stream of online shopping. It all made a sickening kind of sense now. Madeline hadn't just been living a lavish lifestyle. She'd been living my life, or at least a twisted, extravagant version of it, while I was left with the devastating consequences. I remembered asking her once about her seemingly endless supply of money. She'd brushed it off with a casual, "Oh, just manifesting abundance and leveraging my online presence." It had sounded like typical Madeline speak at the time, vague and self-aggrandizing. Now, it felt like a cruel taunt. The way she'd flaunted her success on social media, the smug look she'd give me whenever I questioned her spending habits. It all added up. She hadn't been manifesting abundance. She'd been stealing my identity, piece by piece, leaving me to pick up the shattered remnants of my life. The emotions were overwhelming. I felt foolish and hurt. The next day, instead of visiting a lawyer's office, I had a virtual consultation with Benjamin Wilson, a consumer financial consultant specializing in online fraud. Harper had found him through a local community forum. He was a former bank manager, now retired, who volunteered his time helping victims of financial scams. His virtual office was a simple backdrop of bookshelves, his demeanor calm and reassuring, even through the computer screen. I've received multiple notifications about defaulted loans and maxed out credit cards, all in my name. I explained, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I didn't authorize any of these. I believe my identity has been stolen. Benjamin listened intently, his expression serious. Identity theft, especially online, is becoming increasingly sophisticated. He said, his voice calm and measured. If you don't address these fraudulent accounts, the consequences can be severe. It can damage your credit score, lead to legal action, and even affect your ability to secure housing or employment in the future. He explained the potential ramifications. Lawsuits, wage garnishments, a permanent stain on my credit history. It was a terrifying prospect. Paying off the debts might seem like the easiest solution, Benjamin continued, but it won't necessarily clear your name. It could even be interpreted as an admission of guilt. The first step is to prove you didn't authorize these transactions. I nodded, my heart sinking. I hadn't even considered that paying off the debts could make things worse. I hesitated, then took a deep breath. What if? What if I know who stole my identity? What if it's someone close to me? Benjamin leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. That makes things more complicated, emotionally, but legally, the process is the same. You need to gather evidence, irrefutable proof that you were not the one who opened these accounts or made these purchases. He outlined the steps I needed to take. Reporting the fraud to the credit bureaus, filing a police report, and crucially, gathering as much digital evidence as possible. And what if I can't prove it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The thought of being held responsible for Madeline's actions was terrifying. Then it becomes a much more difficult battle, he admitted. The burden of proof is on you. But digital evidence is powerful. Timestamps, IP addresses, facial recognition data. These can be very persuasive. The sooner you start gathering this evidence, the better. Benjamin continued, his tone reassuring. If you can definitively prove your identity was stolen, you won't be held liable for the debts. The fraudulent accounts will be closed, and your credit report can be corrected. It's a long process, but it's possible. Relief washed over me, fragile but real. There was a path forward, a way to reclaim my life. But then, another question surfaced. A question that made my stomach churn. And what happens? What happens to the person who stole my identity? Benjamin's expression turned somber. If you provide concrete evidence of identity theft, it becomes a criminal matter. The authorities could get involved. The perpetrator could face serious charges, including fraud, forgery, and potentially even jail time, depending on the scale of the deception. I swallowed hard. The reality of the situation hit me with full force. If I came forward, if I exposed Madeline, she could face serious consequences. Prison. My own sister. The thought was both terrifying and, in a strange way, vindicating. Your priority right now is to protect yourself, Benjamin said, his voice firm but kind. This isn't just about money. It's about your identity, your future. If someone close to you is responsible, it's a difficult situation, but you need to put yourself first. His words echoed in my mind, a heavy weight settling in my chest. I had a choice to make: protect the person who had betrayed me, or fight for my own truth, my own future. The decision was agonizing, but I knew, deep down, what I had to do. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, a heavy burden of conflicting emotions. I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Madeline had to be held accountable, not just for the financial damage, but for the profound violation of my trust, of my very identity. But the thought of my twin sister facing criminal charges, of potentially sending her to prison, made me physically ill. That's when the idea took shape, a plan that felt both terrifying and necessary. I would confront her, but in a controlled environment, a setting where the truth couldn't be twisted or ignored. Dad's upcoming retirement party, a celebration of his long career as a teacher, provided the perfect opportunity. With his colleagues, our family, and members of the community present, I would present the irrefutable evidence of Madeline's actions. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to see the disappointment in Dad's eyes, to understand the full impact of what she had done. But I wouldn't involve the authorities, not yet. That was my ultimatum. Madeline would have to confess, publicly acknowledge her actions, and take full responsibility for repairing the damage she had caused. She would have to work with the credit bureaus and financial institutions to clear my name, to restore my credit, to undo the tangled web of deceit she had woven. It was a compromise, a way to hold her accountable without resorting to the full force of the law, a chance for her to make amends without facing the potentially devastating consequences of criminal prosecution. The retirement party was in 2 weeks. That gave me a limited time to prepare, to gather all the digital evidence, to organize it into a coherent, irrefutable presentation. This time, Madeline wouldn't be able to charm her way out of it. She would face the truth, and so would everyone else. The days leading up to Dad's retirement party were a whirlwind of focused activity. Every spare moment was spent meticulously organizing the digital evidence, creating a presentation that would leave no room for doubt or denial. I had screenshots of Madeline's social media posts, timestamps, IP addresses, email correspondence, and the damning facial recognition data from the boutique. Each piece of evidence, a digital brick in the wall of truth I was building. Harper was my indispensable ally, her tech skills and unwavering support keeping me grounded when the enormity of the task threatened to overwhelm me. "You've got this, Olivia," she said, as we reviewed the presentation on my laptop the night before the party. "It's airtight. She won't be able to talk her way out of this." I nodded, my hands trembling slightly as I clicked through the slides. "She's so good at manipulating people, Harper. What if Dad doesn't believe me? What if everyone thinks I'm just jealous or crazy?" Harper placed a reassuring hand on my arm. "This isn't about words, Olivia. It's about irrefutable digital proof. They can't argue with facts, with data. You've done everything right. Now, it's time to let the truth speak for itself." Her words were a lifeline, a source of strength in the face of overwhelming anxiety. I closed my laptop, taking a deep breath. Tomorrow, everything would change. One way or another, the truth would come out. I was fighting not just for my name, but for the future. The moment I walked into the crowded community hall, I felt the familiar sting of judgmental stares. Conversations died down, heads turned, and whispers followed me like a shadow. It was a large gathering. Dad's colleagues, fellow teachers, old friends, family, and even some prominent members of the local community were present. "I can't believe she had the audacity to show up," I heard someone murmur. "After what she did. Unforgivable," another voice replied. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I lifted my chin, refusing to be intimidated. I spotted Dad across the room, standing near the stage with a group of his former colleagues. His expression, when he saw me, was a mixture of disappointment and weary resignation. Madeline, dressed in a dazzling outfit that screamed, "Look at me," was holding court near the buffet table, surrounded by a small group of admirers, basking in their attention. She glanced my way, her eyes narrowing slightly, before she quickly masked her unease with a carefully crafted expression of pitying concern. "Olivia," Dad said, his voice strained and formal as I approached. I wasn't expecting you." I forced a smile, trying to project an air of calm I didn't feel. "Of course I'm here, Dad. It's your retirement party." The tension in the air was palpable. Madeline glided over, her movements fluid and practiced, a glass of champagne in her hand. "Olivia, darling," she said, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "It's so brave of you to come here, considering everything." I clenched my hands, my laptop bag containing the digital presentation slung over my shoulder. "You have no idea, Madeline," I said, my voice low and steady. "But that's why I'm here. I have something to show everyone, something they deserve to see." The room fell silent, the buzz of conversation fading into an expectant hush. Madeline's perfectly sculpted smile faltered, a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. She knew. She knew this wasn't going to be the usual family drama she could easily manipulate. This time, the truth was armed and ready. I walked to the front of the room, near the small stage set up for speeches. My heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The room was silent, every eye fixed on me. I could feel the mixture of disbelief, judgment, and morbid curiosity radiating from the crowd. But I focused on Madeline. Her confident facade was still in place, but I could see the subtle tremor in her hands, the barely perceptible tightening of her jaw. "I know many of you have heard things about me recently," I began, my voice amplified by the microphone, surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Accusations of unpaid bills, of fraudulent accounts, of ruining my family's reputation. It's been incredibly painful to know that so many of you believe I'm capable of such things." I paused, taking a deep breath, letting the silence settle. Madeline shifted uneasily, her smile strained. "But I'm not here to offer excuses or denials. I'm here to present the truth, the digital truth." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the projector. "Everything I'm about to show you is verifiable, documented evidence, taken directly from online sources, from digital records that cannot be easily altered or manipulated." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I launched the presentation, the first slide displaying a collage of screenshots. Madeline's social media posts showcasing her extravagant lifestyle, juxtaposed with images of my maxed out credit card statements and overdue notices. These are my credit card statements, I explained, my voice clear and unwavering. And these, I clicked to the next slide, are screenshots from Madeline's social media accounts. Notice the dates, the locations, the items she's flaunting. They match perfectly. A gasp went through the room. Madeline's facade began to crack, her carefully constructed composure crumbling under the weight of the undeniable evidence. "This is ridiculous," she scoffed, her voice rising in pitch. "You're twisting things, Olivia. You're just jealous of my success." She tried for the usual flippant charm. But I was relentless. I presented slide after slide. IP addresses linking online purchases to Madeline's location, timestamps matching her social media activity, email confirmations of account changes, and finally, the damning facial recognition data from the luxury boutique, showing her face linked to my asterisk name. "This," I said, my voice trembling slightly as I displayed the facial recognition screenshot, "is the undeniable proof. This is a security system used by a high-end online retailer. It uses facial recognition technology to verify identity, and it clearly shows Madeline using my name to make fraudulent purchases." The room was buzzing, a cacophony of whispers and gasps. I looked at Dad, his face ashen, his eyes filled with a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. "Dad," I said, my voice softer now, "I know this is difficult, but the truth is right here in the digital record. She used my identity, my digital life, to fund her lifestyle, and I've been left to deal with the consequences." Madeline stepped forward, her voice shrill, desperate. "She's lying. It's all fabricated. She's hacked my accounts. She's manipulated the data. You all know I wouldn't do this." She was broadcasting live on Instagram, trying to control the narrative. But the weight of the digital evidence was too overwhelming, too irrefutable. And for the first time, I saw doubt, not just in Dad's eyes, but in the eyes of everyone present. The truth, stark and undeniable, was finally out in the open. The room was a swirling vortex of stunned silence and hushed whispers. Faces that had been filled with judgment now reflected shock, disbelief, and a dawning understanding. The shift was palpable. They believed me. The weight of their unfair assumptions, the burden I'd carried for so long, began to lift, replaced by the crushing realization of what Madeline had done. Madeline's face was a mask of fury and humiliation, her carefully constructed online persona shattered in the face of cold, hard digital evidence. "This is insane," she shrieked, her voice cracking with a desperate edge. "You can't possibly believe this. I'm being framed." She tried to push past the crowd, her movements jerky and frantic. "You're all fools for falling for this," she yelled, her voice echoing in the sudden silence as she stormed out of the hall, leaving a stunned audience in her wake. Her live stream abruptly cut out. As soon as the door slammed shut, the room erupted in a chaotic mix of apologies and bewildered questions. Some of Dad's colleagues, faces etched with concern and regret, approached me. "Olivia, I had no idea," one of them said, her voice filled with genuine remorse. "We were so quick to judge. But I couldn't stay. I had to confront Madeline, to hear the truth from her own lips, away from the judging eyes of the crowd." I pushed past the throng of people, my heart pounding in my chest. "Olivia, wait," Dad called after me, his voice filled with a mixture of confusion and pain. I hesitated, but only for a moment. I heard his footsteps following me as I stepped out into the cool evening air. I found Madeline in the parking lot, frantically trying to unlock her car, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the keys. "Madeline," I shouted, my voice echoing across the empty lot. She froze, then slowly turned to face me, her expression a volatile mix of anger, fear, and a desperate attempt at defiance. Dad caught up, his breath ragged, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions. "What in God's name is going on here?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and bewilderment. I stepped towards Madeline, my gaze unwavering. You're not getting away with this. We need to talk. Now. Madeline's eyes darted between me and Dad, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of her exposed deception. She leaned against her car, crossing her arms in a feeble attempt to project an air of defiance. Admit it, Madeline, I said, my voice firm and resolute. Tell Dad the truth. Tell him what you did, or I will go to the authorities. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought she might try to brazen it out, to continue the charade. But the weight of the evidence, the public exposure, the shattered trust. It was too much, even for her. Madeline, Dad said, his voice breaking, a heartbreaking blend of anger and despair. Is what Olivia's saying true? Did you really do all this? Madeline scoffed, rolling her eyes in a last, desperate attempt at deflection. Fine, she snapped, her voice cracking. Yes, I did it. Okay? I used her identity. I created those accounts. I spent the money. But I didn't think it would get this out of hand. I thought it would all just disappear. Dad staggered back as if he'd been physically struck. How could you? He whispered, his voice raw with pain. To your own sister? To your own family? She wouldn't have noticed. Madeline retorted, her voice shrill with a desperate, misplaced justification. She's so oblivious, so focused on her boring little life. I thought she wouldn't even care. I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. You didn't just hurt me, Madeline. You violated my trust, my identity, my life. And I was ready to let you off the hook if you just confessed and fixed it. But if you don't clear my name, if you don't undo the damage you've caused, I will make sure everyone knows the truth, including the police. Madeline stared at me, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. For once, she had no witty retort, no clever excuse, no way to manipulate her way out of the mess she had created. Her defiance finally crumbled, her shoulders slumping as tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I got carried away. Dad looked at her, his expression a heartbreaking mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Carried away? Madeline, do you have any idea what you've done? To Olivia? To our family's reputation? She wiped at her eyes, shaking her head. I'll fix it, she said quickly, her voice trembling with a desperate plea. I'll pay everything back. I'll clear Olivia's name. I'll do whatever it takes. I promise. I watched her, searching for any sign of insincerity, but for the first time, Madeline looked genuinely remorseful, stripped of her usual arrogance and self-deception. You better mean that, I said, my voice firm but softer now. Because this is your last chance. If you don't follow through, I won't hesitate. She nodded frantically. I do. I will. I promise, Olivia. I'll make it right. Over the next few months, Madeline, with a surprising amount of humility, kept her word. She contacted the credit card companies, the online retailers, and the various institutions, providing statements and documentation to clear my name. It was a long, arduous process, and it didn't erase the emotional scars overnight. But step by step, my credit was restored, my digital identity reclaimed. I couldn't forget what she had done, but I found a measure of peace in knowing that justice, in its own way, had been served. It wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Madeline's actions had left deep wounds, but they had also forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, to stand up for myself, to reclaim my life and my identity. My family, shaken but ultimately supportive, began to see me in a new light, not just as the quiet, unassuming twin, but as someone who had faced a profound betrayal with strength and resilience. Trust with Madeline would take time, perhaps a lifetime, to rebuild. But I found a strange sense of liberation in stepping out from under her shadow, in forging my own path. I started collaborating with Benjamin Wilson, giving talks at the community college about online safety and digital literacy. I even co-authored an anonymous article, My Twin Stole My Digital Identity, which went viral, sparking a national conversation about the dangers of online fraud and the importance of protecting one's digital footprint. Harper and I even talked about starting a small consulting business, helping others navigate the increasingly complex world of online security. The experience, as painful as it was, had given me a newfound purpose, a sense of agency I had never known before.